Hi, I'm Sarah Jackson. I am a second grade teacher at the Christ Community Church Altair campus in Omaha, Nebraska. And I am here just to give you guys a little bit more information on logic of English, how to implement it, the nuts and bolts. So I hope that this training will help you out. If you have more questions, reach out to your classroom teacher or director at your campus. We're going to talk about teaching phonograms with logic of English. This is the heart of the curriculum. Phonograms are written visual representations of sounds. And when you see them, let me pull out a couple for you guys. You'll see a letter that looks like this. But when we're working with phonograms, we're going to refer to these by their sounds, not by their letter names. So instead of calling this N, you're going to see this and refer to it as N. Now, you can look on the back of the card and you'll see the sound that you should make that's associated with this letter in between the slashes on the back of the card. And you'll also see a sample word. In case you're not sure how to read that sound, you probably know how to read the word nut. And so you know that that bolded letter is saying N in the word nut. Now, some letters, like this, letter O, have more than one sound that they can make in a word. So when you flip that card over, you're going to see on the back that it makes 3 sounds. So every time you see a letter O, you're actually going to refer to it as ah, o, oo. So we have the short vowel sound first, the long vowel sound, and then this one with the 2 dots over the top, that's our broad sound. And so then again, they have the sample words: on, that's ah; go, it's saying O in that word; and do, it's saying oo. So if you ever get stuck, look for the sample word to give you a hint on the sound that it's making. Excuse me. All right, so the phonograms are the most foundational element of our written language. Most people think that English is very illogical, but actually 98% of English words can be accurately described using 75 phonograms and 31 spelling rules. And we're going to be working with those throughout the entirety of the curriculum. So your child will have all of those phonograms memorized, and those should be being drilled all the time because we want them to know all those sounds and have those memorized. When we do spelling analysis, we're kind of getting away from thinking of it as a spelling list where we're just memorizing words. That's not our goal here. Our goal is to actually help the kids learn to think about language in a new way. They're analyzing, why is a word spelled this way? What spelling or what rules are in play? What phonograms are being used? You'll also find in the practice lessons as well as on the assessments that there's a heavy emphasis on dictation. And the reason that we do this is that we want to help kids use the words in the context of the act of writing. So instead of just writing the word farm, we're going to ask them to write, I live on a farm, or the farm is big. Or of course, if you have an older student, you can make that dictation match the level of complexity that they are able to handle. But we don't want them to just be able to write the word on a list when we're dictating it to them. We want them to be able, when they're writing a paper, to be able to spell these words in that context. So how are you going to know what to say? Well, you're going to see these phonograms represented in different ways in your textbook. And you can also find this information at the front of your book. There's several pages that kind of go through a lot of this information, and I recommend you read that. But if you see a letter that's written and it's not capitalized, so it looks like this, you're not going to say the letter names, you're going to use the phonogram sounds. So when you see this, you're going to say a, ah. When you see this, you're going to refer to it as I, 3-letter I. When you see this, you're going to refer to it as e, a. Okay, and your students are going to do that as well. It's going to become a common language that you can use, and you can also cue your students as they're reading and decoding words with these phonogram sounds so that you're giving them a hint but not doing all of the work for them. When you see the letters capitalized, that's when you can actually say the letter names. So this would be referred to as A. This would be IGH. This would be EA. When you see letters enclosed in slashes, that's asking you to make the sound. So when I see this, I'm going to say S. When I see this, I'm going to say Z. And then when I have slashes and dashes together, I'm going to make the sound separated by a pause. So it's going to sound like I'm sounding a word out. S, I, T. Okay, those are the different ways that you're going to see sounds and phonograms represented. So that's how you interpret those. Outside of phonograms, one of our big pieces of this curriculum are the assessments. If you are in foundation, so kindergarten and first graders, you will have an assessment after every 5 lessons. If you have a second through 5th grader that is in the essentials books, that's going to happen in part 5 of each unit. And it's the part that's called Check Your Understanding. So these assessments are not at all about giving your child a grade. They are designed to help you monitor your students' progress. So we want to create an atmosphere where it's acceptable to make errors and mistakes. We want to gain insight into what needs more work. What are they doing well? What do they need extra help on to work towards mastery? So by analyzing their responses to the assessments, you're going to see what they understand, what needs more work. And the types of things that you might be looking for are a phonogram that's consistently being misspelled, or a spelling rule that's not being applied consistently, things like that. After each assessment, there's always going to be a review day, and it'll say in your plans, work toward mastery of Unit 1 concepts, or work toward mastery of, Assessment A concepts. So we're always trying to move forward and master the concepts that they've presented. If your child has all of those concepts mastered, that's amazing. We want to fan those flames. How can you push them farther? How can you challenge them? There's lots of ideas in the margins of your textbook that you can use. You can come up with your own challenge activities, but we want them to continue working and getting better. So those review days are not, we don't want you to think of that as a light day or a day off. Our goal is mastery, so that's your opportunity to give your child the specialized individual instruction in the areas that you've seen that they need help. Your teacher will communicate with you on how they'd like to see those results. So your assessments are always going to take place on your home days. We've done that intentionally because you have the opportunity to work one-on-one with your child and give them that specialized instruction. But we would like you to communicate how that's going with your teacher, and your teacher will reach out to you and let you know. They may just want to look at the assessment the next school day. They may want you to send them a note via email or in Google Classroom. So they will communicate with you on how they'd like to see that done. Also, the assessments offer an opportunity for students to take ownership by analyzing their own assessments. So highlighters are handy for this. As you're going through the assessment, after you've given it to them, a student, maybe you give them a certain color highlighter and have them just circle the spots where they might have guessed. Maybe they guessed right, but we want them to know the answer, not just be guessing. So that might be an area that we hone in on, because it's not about getting the answer right, it's about actually knowing the material. All right, so what is this going to look like at Alitaire? If you are in kinder or first, you're going to be doing foundations. You'll do 1 whole lesson per day, and you'll do 3 to 4 lessons per week. If you're in essentials, you're going to do 1 unit every 2 weeks. You'll see that those units are broken up into parts. And so when you're looking at your lesson plans, I'll pull up my book here. It will say part 1, 1.1. So it'll give you a part within your unit to refer to, and a decimal number. There are not page numbers written at this time, so you're going to be referring to these decimal numbers on the side that match the unit and the specific piece of the lesson that you're going to be doing. All right, so we will take 2 weeks to go through each of those units in the upper grades. These are all of the concepts that will be covered. For 3rd through 5th, you will not be using the grammar piece of Logic of English. You'll have a separate grammar program. You won't be using the handwriting or the reading. But K through 2 will be using the program in its entirety. We have intentionally built review into our lessons because that's an opportunity to work toward individual mastery of the concepts. We want our kids to not only show a heart for the Lord, but also to be able to show excellence in the work that God is calling them to. You will see that the vocabulary portions of the lessons are not so much about learning the meaning of the word, but they're going to teach kids how to take a word that they're learning and add a prefix or a suffix to change it and make a new word. And what do those prefixes and suffixes mean? Things like that. All right, so you may have some questions percolating in your mind at this point. So I'm hoping to answer some of these for you. All right, so first, how do I drill the phonograms and the spelling rules? So you're going to drill these using the phonogram cards that you have. And how this is going to look is you're going to stand in front of your child and you're going to hold up the card. You've got the cheat sheet on the back. Right here is what you'll see. So you're going to say it out loud, hold it up, and you'll say, ah, oh, ooh. And then you'll pause and let your child repeat that back to you. Eventually, you'll be able to hold this and they'll just say it for you. You won't even have to say it to them, but you're just going to go through it. Ah, oh, ooh. They'll say it back. They'll say it back. P. Say it back. Make sure on these that you don't say puh. We're saying p. Don't put an on the end of those. Quack, quack. They're going to repeat it back. R. And they'll repeat it back. So that's how you can drill the phonograms. You can also have them, give them a whiteboard and have them say it and write it at the same time. That's another way to just increase their depth of learning and their knowledge. I have a little container that I just got at a dollar store that I can fit all my cards in to kind of keep them organized. So there's a lot of cards that we have with these, so that might be a good option for you. So with our spelling flashcards, you're going to drill them the same way. The kids are actually going to be able to memorize this entire phrase. So you're going to say it. C always softens to S when followed by E, I, or Y. Otherwise, C says K. And they're going to repeat that back. C always softens to S when followed by E, I, or Y. Otherwise, C says K, not K. K. On the back of these, for instance, if a spelling rule is tripping your child up, you can look at some examples on the back, and those are words that you can kind of work through with your child to help them practice those spelling rules. Here's another example. They'll learn to say, G may soften to J only when followed by E, I, or Y. Otherwise, G says G. So they'll get all of those memorized and you'll drill those on a regular basis so that they can apply them. How do I dictate for spelling analysis? And do I really need to know how to do this? If your child is at school on day 3, we will do that spelling analysis with them at school. If your child is sick that day or gone, then you will be responsible for doing that at home. But it's still a great idea for you to know how to do this, because if there's a word that your child is struggling with, you're going to want to go back and redictate that word for them so that they get kind of a refresher course of all the spelling rules and phonograms that are in play there. So we're going to look at an example. I'm going to just pull up, this is list 1.B, so this would be one that a 4th grader would be using. When you're looking at the spelling analysis, you should have a little quick reference guide. This is going to be very handy. So you'll see numbers and you'll see the corresponding numbers in your book. So this is going to tell you what to do next to each of these. So each word has 2 lines. If you're in foundations, this is going to be not as robust in your books. It'll just be a smaller version of this. So when I see the word, number 1, it says, say the word. So I'm going to say skunk. Then I go on to number 2, sentence. It says, read the sentence, repeat the word. There is a skunk near the log. Skunk. Okay. Number 3, it says, how many syllables? It says, the students count the syllables. They can either hum the word or they can put their hand under their chin, and you're feeling for how many times does my chin move. So if I say skunk with my hand under my chin, I notice my chin goes down 1 time. So I'm going to say skunk, 1, or I can hum it, 1 syllable. Okay, then we get to say to spell. For number 4, it says, pause for each syllable and carefully enunciate each syllable as written in the say to spell column. The students repeat the say to spell. So we're going to say to spell skunk, and they're going to repeat that, skunk. Then 5, say the syllable. The students say the first syllable. Well, this one only has 1 syllable, so we're just going to say skunk. And then it says to segment it. And we're going to finger spell and cue. I think this is sometimes what scares people the most, but I don't want you to be afraid. Here's what we're doing when we finger spell. We're giving our students a visual to help them to spell the word. You can either do the whole word on one hand, or you can just do one sound at a time. A finger represents a letter. So if you have a phonogram that has more than 1 letter to represent a sound, then you'll use however many letters it takes to spell that sound. So let's do our example with skunk. I'm going to say s, and I'm going to tell them, give them this clue, use s, z. Okay, so when I say that, they're going to be thinking of the letter S because they've memorized their phonograms. Then I'm going to say k, and then I'm going to say use tall k, because they're going to think, oh, there's multiple phonograms that can say k. Which one is it? I'm telling them with my cue, tall k. And then I'm going to say n, k, use tall k. Okay, so I'm giving them those clues, and they're going to write that then. I'm going to ask them to say it and repeat it as they're writing it. So they're going to be sitting there, s, k, n, k. And then I'm going to stand at the board and I'm going to say, okay, now help me to write it. And they're going to say all those sounds, and I'm going to write it on the board for them. If there's more than 1 syllable, they're going to leave a space in between those syllables just to give them that visual of 2 syllables. They're going to help me write it. So that's number 8. Number 8 says, write the segment. So they're going to sound it out, segment it, and I'm going to write it on the board, and I'm going to say to them, does your word look like mine? They're going to fix any problems. And then the last thing we do is the actual analysis. So I'm going to say, how do we mark it? And while the students are analyzing the spelling, we're going to mark it. Now this one, there won't be any markings because all of the letters are making their first sound. However, let's just look at another word that would have markings. If I go to like the word banquet, if we were looking at the markings, we would say underline the qu. We're going to refer to that by its phonogram sound. And then it will tell you if there's any spelling rules. So this is because of spelling rule 11. Q always needs a U, therefore U is not a vowel here. Let's look at this example. This is the word breathless. So when I'm doing breathless and we're analyzing the word at the end, I would be saying, okay, we're going to underline the E-A, and we're thinking, which sound does that make in this word? Well, it's not saying breathless, it's saying breathless. I hear it saying eh. So that phonogram is making its second sound. We're going to mark it by underlining it and then putting a 2. So, and it will tell you exactly what to do. Underline the E sound, and put a 2 over it. And here's why. E-A said its second sound. The second marking you're going to do, underline the th, and that's rule 30 is in play because of the double S. We often double F, L, and S after a single short or broad vowel at the end of a base word. Occasionally, other letters are also doubled. Okay, so all of that information, the correspondence with that quick reference sheet is here for you. Any rules, vowel sounds, what to say about the markings is all written there for you. So you'll have that script there for you to read. Okay. Yeah, and that, I think it's important to learn just because that does give us a common language with our kids when they're reading a book or trying to spell a word and they come to you and they inevitably ask, well, how do I spell breath? You know, and you can say, well, you use you're going to do b, use the E-A, use the th. Okay, so you can give them those clues without telling them the full answer and doing the work for them. Or if they're looking at the word breath in a book and they're having trouble sounding that out, you can say, oh, I spy E-A. Do you see that? And we're training their eyes to always be looking for those phonograms as they're reading and working through, the decoding process. How do I read the lesson plans? When you're looking at your plans, again, you're going to see essentials. It'll tell you which books. If you're in 1 through 7 or 8 through 15, whatever book you're in, it'll tell you the unit and the part. So I would just keep a tab in my book. I've got one right here. I like these tabs that are a little bit sturdier, and just have that kind of tabbed or some type of bookmark tabbed where you're at so you can find that unit quickly. And then the part is always in like a magenta strip. And then it will tell you those decimal numbers that we looked at earlier, 2.4 and 2.5, and then which headings to do within those categories. So hopefully there are no page numbers, but hopefully you can reference it with those decimal parts. Okay, what if I don't have a workbook and I don't have a spelling journal? If you are in grades 3 through 5, the workbook and the spelling journal were not part of the curriculum that you were required to buy. So if you see that, for instance, like in your books, sometimes you'll see something that looks like this. It'll say 2.2 vowels, page 13. That's a reference to the workbook, the student workbook. So there are pages there to help your child practice the skill. You can just read in your manual kind of what they're wanting them to do. Like, oh, this is from the manual. It says, I'll read a vowel and circle the vowel sound that you hear. So you could certainly have them, you could read it and just have them write something on a whiteboard. You can practice that other ways. Or you are welcome to purchase a workbook. If you don't feel like you want to do that, these workbooks are about $10 a piece. And you can just open this up and have it available for your child to use. They also have pieces of the workbook that go along with the assessment, if you would prefer to do that instead of having to write it out in your own notebook. You're welcome to purchase one of these. And the spelling journal will just have help in analyzing the different sounds. So you'll be looking for words that use a phonogram in these specific contexts, and you'll be just listing them in this journal. These books are about $6 to buy on the Logic of English website, or you can also purchase the PDF. If you've got multiple kids and you want to just download it and print it yourself, you can print it as many times as you want. Or you're welcome to just get a blank notebook for 35 cents at Walmart, and you can make your own spelling journal by just putting those phonograms up at the top of the page. So that is totally up to you how you want to handle that for 3rd through 5th graders. 2nd K through 2, you should have all of the materials in the book. All right, and what can I do at home before school starts? I would just definitely recommend practicing those phonograms, getting your child familiar with them. And these 2 images are images of YouTube videos. I'm going to send these out to your teachers so that they can hopefully pass those links on to you, and you can just click on that YouTube video and you can practice the phonograms, your child can practice the phonograms, and hopefully get through those and become more familiar with them. If you feel a little bit nervous about drilling those, that might be a great thing for you as a parent to watch, or you can have your kid watch them and just practice repeating those sounds back. One last quick thing before I go. I just wanted to point out one of the other great materials that you have in your collection, which are these game cards. And these would be for probably K through 2. You should have gotten these game cards. There are lots of games that are written into the curriculum, and you'll get to do a lot of those at home for all grades. And hopefully that will just be an opportunity for you to make this learning really fun for your child, and your kids can play the games together. It can be an awesome opportunity for you to work with one child one-on-one while your kids are still learning and practicing their schoolwork. So in these, you'll see game pieces. You'll have a cursive set and a print set. Book face is what it's called. And we want them to have both because they're going to be matching up, what does it look like in cursive? What does it look like in print? And you'll see the different phonograms. They'll play games with these, such as memory. Or Go Fish, different games where they'll have a partner, or maybe you're the partner, or maybe another child of yours. This is an opportunity for you to be really strategic about the phonograms that you choose for them. So if it tells you to choose 10 phonograms or 20 cards or whatever, be strategic about choosing ones that your child needs extra work on, because this is just another fun way for you to give them more practice. So if they're really good with the single letter phonograms, pick some that are multi-letter ones that they're struggling with. You might pick, sh, that might be an easy one for them, but maybe they're really struggling with ow, o. Okay, so include that in your game. Don't include the ones that are super easy for them.